Have you ever wondered what it means to live with purpose? Not just to exist, not just to hustle, but to truly live wisely, with clarity and conviction. What if ancient philosophy held the keys to mastering your modern life? Today, we explore the timeless daily practices of Stoic philosophers Zeno, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. These weren't armchair thinkers. They were leaders, warriors, slaves, and emperors who practiced philosophy with discipline and intention. If you're seeking a framework to improve your emotional resilience, sharpen your moral clarity, and live with unshakable self-respect, then this is your path. Before we begin, if you're passionate about mastering your mindset and living a life of inner power, subscribe now and join us on this journey of self-elevation. 1. Virtue, the only true good. Imagine a life where external chaos no longer controls your inner world. That's the Stoic idea of virtue, the belief that the only true good lies within your character. The Stoics, particularly figures like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, argued that no matter what happens around you, whether you lose your job, your reputation suffers, or your health declines, your capacity to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control remains untouched. These are not just abstract qualities, but living principles. To live virtuously is to be free from the tyranny of circumstances, because the good life is not a life without pain, loss, or uncertainty. It is a life where your response to those things reflects your highest self. Virtue, then, is a shield against despair, a way to retain dignity in the face of chaos. The Stoics argued that wealth, fame, even health are indifferent. They're neither good nor bad by themselves. Only how we use them, whether we act justly, courageously, and wisely, determines their value. In this moral schema, the external things we chase are considered preferred indifference, things that might enhance life, but are never essential for moral goodness. Take money, for instance. It can be used for charitable works or selfish indulgence. Its moral worth isn't inherent. It lies entirely in the hands of the person wielding it. This idea is liberating. If virtue is the only true good, then losing money doesn't mean you've lost your value. The Stoics didn't reject pleasure or success outright. They simply demoted them from the throne they often occupy in human ambition. In academic terms, this is a radical reorientation of value systems. It challenges utilitarian outcomes and redirects our focus inward toward integrity, reason, and moral responsibility. In contrast to systems that judge right or wrong by consequences or social approval, Stoicism is virtue ethics taken to its purest form. It asks not, what did you gain, but who did you become? This shift in metrics demands introspection. It's not about whether your actions succeeded, but whether they aligned with wisdom and justice. Philosophers have long debated what makes a life worth living. The Stoics answer unequivocally, it's the life where the soul governs itself according to nature and reason. If we train ourselves to evaluate success not by results, but by our adherence to virtue, then we remove power from fortune and reclaim it for ourselves. The Stoics called this becoming invincible, not in body or reputation, but in soul. If your happiness depends solely on your moral choices, then no one can take it from you. It's no longer at the mercy of promotion boards, fickle lovers, or economic crashes. You become your own measure. This is the great Stoic promise. By elevating character over condition, you gain sovereignty over your inner world. This is not just moral posturing, it's practical. In a world obsessed with external markers of success, virtue grounds you. It becomes the compass that never lies. When you are faced with hard decisions, you ask, what would justice require? What would courage demand? Not, will this make me richer or more admired? Virtue simplifies complex decisions because it prioritizes values over vanity. And in a culture increasingly racked by anxiety and burnout. Returning to a character-based definition of the good life might be not only wise, but necessary. 2. Daily discipline and the mindful life. How do you make wisdom part of your daily life? The answer lies in routine discipline. Just as scholars journal their thoughts and experiments, the Stoics engaged in daily reflection and self-monitoring. For them, philosophy wasn't an abstract endeavor. It was a lived practice. You didn't just study the concept of justice. You measured your actions against it every day. This level of consistency transforms self-awareness from a fleeting feeling into a daily ritual. It's not about achieving perfection, but about becoming a better steward of your own mind. Daily discipline provides structure, and that structure, in turn, breeds resilience. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every morning and night, not to impress others, but to keep his mind sharp and his spirit humble. His meditations are the personal notebook of a philosopher king, a man at the pinnacle of power, reminding himself daily of the limits of control, the certainty of death, and the value of integrity. He didn't write for an audience. He wrote to reinforce his own principles, to correct his failings, and to remind himself that philosophy was a verb, something you do, not just something you think. This routine was his spiritual hygiene, the way he cleaned his mind of ego, fear, and illusion. This is remarkably similar to modern academic practices, reflective journaling, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and behavioral self-analysis. The overlap is no accident. These tools work because self-awareness is the foundation of self-mastery. Today, therapists and psychologists recommend journaling to combat anxiety, increase gratitude, and identify cognitive distortions. Stoicism intuited all of this centuries ago. The daily habit of checking in with oneself creates a mental mirror, a feedback loop where growth becomes visible and intention replaces impulse. In this light, Stoic routines resemble the daily practices of elite athletes or musicians, structured, repetitive, and deeply intentional. By examining our thoughts, confronting our flaws, and recentering on core values, we don't just grow, we evolve consciously. Stoicism becomes a personal research project where you are both the subject and the scientist. You're not waiting for life to teach you lessons through suffering. You're proactively testing your beliefs and behaviors against philosophical standards. This disciplined curiosity transforms daily life into a laboratory of the soul. Every interaction becomes data, every emotional reaction a hypothesis to explore. The result is not cold detachment, but refined presence. You don't numb yourself to life, you engage it more skillfully. Ultimately, daily discipline is not about controlling life, but about responding to it with control. It's about knowing yourself so well that you don't need external validation to act rightly. In a society of distractions, daily Stoic practice is a radical act of attention. It reminds you that how you live each day is how you live your life. The mindful life is not passive, it's the most active engagement with existence possible. And through this engagement, we move closer to the Stoic ideal, a mind that is calm not because the world is calm, but because it is rooted in wisdom. 3. Premeditation of adversity, power through preparation. Can imagining the worst actually make you stronger? According to the Stoics, yes. They didn't see adversity as something to fear, but as something to prepare for. Life, they believed, is unpredictable, and pretending otherwise is a recipe for suffering. By mentally rehearsing potential losses, insults, illnesses, or even death, the Stoics trained themselves to face reality without panic. This mental rehearsal was not about living in fear, it was about inoculating the soul. Just as a vaccine introduces a weakened form of a virus to build immunity, the premeditation of adversity builds psychological resilience against misfortune. Premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of adversity, was their method of building inner armor. They visualized failure, pain, and death, not to invite misery, but to prepare the mind. Seneca urged his readers to consider exile, poverty, even torture, not because he was morbid, but because forewarned is forearmed. He wrote, "He robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand." This visualization wasn't a passive daydream, but a training drill for the soul. The Stoics knew that fear thrives in the unknown, and by imagining misfortune, in vivid detail they robbed it of surprise and sting. This practice has a modern psychological mirror: negative visualization. Studies show that by contemplating potential setbacks, we reduce their emotional sting and cultivate gratitude. In contrast to the toxic positivity often promoted in self-help culture, this approach acknowledges life's fragility and builds mental toughness. Athletes visualize loss to build focus. Soldiers simulate crisis scenarios to enhance readiness. Therapists use exposure therapy to desensitize anxiety. These are all modern echoes of the ancient Stoic exercise, evidence that the philosophy wasn't just wise, but psychologically sound. Academic resilience programs echo this technique, training students to anticipate obstacles, not avoid them. When we face potential failure in the mind first, we become less reactive and more adaptable in real life. It's not about becoming cynical, but about becoming competent. A student who expects to struggle during finals, or an entrepreneur who prepares for rejection, suffers less when these challenges arrive. By simulating adversity mentally, we not only protect ourselves from emotional shock, but also learn to see hardship as something survivable and even instructive. Premeditation teaches us that suffering imagined is suffering reduced. It's not about pessimism, it's about mental readiness. When you rehearse worst-case scenarios, you are not manifesting disaster. You are declawing it. You are turning fear into familiarity. In doing so, you become the kind of person who is not easily shaken, not because you deny reality, but because you've already looked it in the eye. And in that courageous gaze lies true strength. The strength not to avoid suffering, but to endure and transcend it. 4. Self-denial and the science of appreciation. When was the last time you chose discomfort voluntarily? The Stoics did it often, not for punishment, but for strength. Voluntary discomfort is a foreign concept to most modern people, accustomed to convenience and instant gratification. But for the Stoics, discomfort was not a punishment or a sign of deprivation. It was a tool of empowerment. They understood that true freedom comes not from indulging every whim, but from mastering one's impulses. Choosing discomfort was a practice in mental fortitude, a controlled environment to simulate the unexpected hardships life might throw at them. Seneca, for instance, would deliberately sleep on the floor or eat meager meals to remind himself that he could survive without luxury. These acts weren't exercises in masochism, they were rehearsals for adversity. By subjecting themselves to minor forms of deprivation, the Stoics built resilience. Because if you can endure discomfort by choice, you can better withstand it when it arrives uninvited. This practice fosters confidence and self-efficacy, the quiet but unshakable belief that I can handle whatever life brings. In choosing discomfort, they didn't shrink from the human condition. They embraced it fully and prepared themselves to meet it on their terms. By fasting, sleeping on hard surfaces, or wearing coarse clothes, they reminded themselves that comfort was not a right, but a privilege. Modern life often trains us to view comfort as a baseline, not a luxury. We expect climate control, 3 meals a day, endless entertainment, and ergonomic furniture as if these were fundamental human entitlements. The Stoics rejected this assumption. They understood that clinging to comfort weakens the soul. To break this dependence, they would practice ascetic exercises, not because they despised pleasure, but because they didn't want to be enslaved by it. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, slept on a simple bed and wore plain robes despite having access to every luxury imaginable. Why? Because he knew the fragility of excess. When people believe that they must have comfort to be content, they become vulnerable to suffering the moment life deviates from ideal conditions. By sleeping on a hard floor or fasting for a day, the Stoics taught themselves that they were not beholden to comfort. This mindset leads to what modern psychologists call hedonic recalibration, a resetting of our baseline expectations. When you deny yourself comfort temporarily, its return feels like a gift. This reawakens gratitude and dismantles the entitlement that so often undermines contentment. This may seem outdated, but it's supported by behavioral psychology. Intentional deprivation increases gratitude and strengthens willpower. Although Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, modern science continues to confirm its wisdom. Behavioral psychology and neuroscience reveal that self-imposed deprivation can be a powerful tool for emotional regulation. Studies show that when individuals voluntarily abstain from pleasure, their appreciation for it increases. This is tied to what researchers call hedonic adaptation, the tendency for people to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness after positive or negative changes. By periodically stepping away from indulgence, we interrupt this adaptation cycle. In doing so, we reignite appreciation. Additionally, small acts of self-denial function as willpower workouts. Much like a muscle, self-control can be strengthened through repeated use. A simple exercise like skipping your morning coffee or walking instead of driving forces the brain to delay gratification and stay present. These micro-decisions, though seemingly trivial, train the brain to prioritize long-term value over short-term pleasure, a hallmark of psychological maturity. Far from being outdated, the Stoics were pioneering a practice that modern therapists now encourage in behavior modification and habit formation. Academic research shows that delayed gratification predicts long-term success better than IQ or talent. Practicing small denials rewires the brain for patience, focus, and inner peace. The classic marshmallow test, a famous psychological study on delayed gratification, revealed that children who could resist an immediate reward in favor of a greater one later on tended to fare better in life. They had higher academic achievement, better health outcomes, and stronger social skills. The implication is profound. The ability to delay gratification is a stronger predictor of success than raw intelligence or innate ability. This principle aligns perfectly with Stoic practice. By cultivating patience and intentional restraint, through small denials, you develop neurological pathways associated with self-control and executive function. Over time, these choices shape your identity, not just who you are, but how you handle life. You become more tolerant of discomfort, more immune to distraction, and more in command of your emotional landscape. The result isn't deprivation, but serenity. You gain a clearer mind, unclouded by constant craving, and a heart unburdened by dissatisfaction. In this way, self-denial becomes not a rejection of life's pleasures, but an elevation of your relationship to them. Voluntary hardship done mindfully doesn't make you weaker. It makes you more grateful for what you have, and more prepared for when life takes it away. Life will take things from you. It's not a possibility. It's a certainty. Loved ones die, jobs are lost, health declines. The Stoics, ever pragmatic, knew this and prepared accordingly. By rehearsing loss through voluntary hardship, they inoculated themselves against despair. If you've experienced hunger by choice, the pain of involuntary hunger becomes less paralyzing. If you've gone without sleep, warmth, or status, and discovered that you are still you, you become less defined by externals and more grounded in internal resilience. Moreover, these practices sharpen your appreciation for the present. Drinking clean water after a day of fasting is a sacred experience. Resting on a bed after sleeping on the floor feels like royalty. This contrast brings clarity and gratitude, which are often drowned out in abundance. In a world obsessed with acquiring more, The Stoics remind us that subtracting can sometimes bring more value than adding. Not only does voluntary hardship prepare us for the unexpected, it teaches us that we already have more than we need to live well. 5. Clarity, control, and living by nature. What can you actually control in life? The Stoics had a clear answer: your thoughts, your actions, and your values. Everything else? Not up to you. Control is a central theme in Stoic philosophy, and also one of the most misunderstood. In a world filled with uncertainty, the Stoics proposed a simple, radical idea: focus only on what you can actually govern. This includes your judgments, your behavior, and the principles you live by. Everything else, whether it's your reputation, your health, your wealth, or even the outcome of your efforts, belongs to the domain of fate. This dichotomy of control doesn't mean passivity or indifference. It means discernment. Epictetus taught that our suffering often comes not from the events themselves, but from our mistaken belief that we should be able to control them. When we obsess over outcomes or external events, we surrender our peace to forces beyond us. By internalizing this boundary, this mental firewall, we reclaim our autonomy. You may not be able to control the storm, but you can control how you steer your ship. This clarity is liberation. It allows you to act boldly and ethically without the anxiety of controlling everything. This dichotomy of control is a powerful framework, one that aligns with cognitive behavioral therapy and stress management strategies used in academic and clinical settings today. Far from being a dusty relic of ancient thought, the Stoic dichotomy of control has found renewed relevance in modern psychology. In fact, it serves as a foundational principle in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most effective therapeutic approaches for anxiety, depression, and trauma. CBT helps individuals identify distorted thoughts, distinguish between controllable and uncontrollable variables, and shift their energy toward actionable change. This mirrors what Epictetus emphasized centuries ago. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Therapists today echo this wisdom when they teach clients to reframe thoughts, set realistic expectations, and let go of what they can't change. Additionally, stress management techniques, such as mindfulness, meditation, and acceptance, are deeply Stoic in nature. They teach that serenity comes from surrendering the illusion of control. By aligning our expectations with reality, we reduce internal friction and increase psychological resilience. The Stoics were not just philosophers, they were early practitioners of emotional mastery, well ahead of their time. When we stop wasting energy on what we can't influence, we reclaim that energy to focus on what matters: our character, our conduct, our contribution. Energy is finite. The more we pour into things we can't control, other people's opinions, the economy, the weather, politics, the less we have for the one thing we can govern: our own life. This misallocation of focus breeds frustration, helplessness, and burnout. The Stoics offer an elegant solution: withdraw energy from the external and reinvest it internally. Focus on your choices, your virtues, and your service to others. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time wishing away the plagues or wars of his era. Instead, he turned inward and asked, "What is the right action right now?" This shift empowers us. When you stop complaining and start contributing, you transform from victim to agent. You gain agency, not over the world, but over your role within it. This mindset doesn't shrink your world, it expands your influence where it truly matters. You become more effective, more compassionate, and more at peace. It is the paradox of Stoicism. In relinquishing control, you gain real power. Living according to nature for the Stoics meant aligning with reason, acting with integrity, and contributing to the common good. It's not about isolating from society, it's about harmonizing with it through inner order. To live, According to nature is a Stoic ideal that is often misinterpreted. It doesn't mean becoming a hermit in the woods or rejecting civilization. Rather, it means living in harmony with human nature, using reason as your guide, pursuing virtue as your purpose, and embracing your role within the larger fabric of society. Human beings, the Stoics argued, are rational and social animals. Therefore, a natural life is one guided by wisdom and lived in service to others. Integrity, fairness, courage. These are not optional virtues but necessary ingredients for a fulfilling life. To deviate from them is to live unnaturally, like a fish trying to live out of water. Moreover, living by nature means understanding that we are part of something larger than ourselves. We are nodes in a complex, interdependent system. By contributing to the common good, whether through parenting, leadership, craftsmanship, or friendship, we align ourselves with a deeper order. This alignment brings not just moral clarity, but psychological peace. By clarifying what's in our power and living accordingly, we create a calm, focused, and ethical life, even amid external chaos. Chaos is inevitable. There will always be crises, global, personal, or both. But amidst the noise, the Stoic finds clarity. This clarity is not rooted in naivety or wishful thinking, but in the disciplined habit of asking, is this within my control? If the answer is yes, act with virtue. If no, release it. This approach filters out noise and centers your attention. You stop being jerked around by every headline, every mood swing, every social provocation. Instead, you become like the eye of the storm, calm, focused, and still. Ethical living becomes easier too because you are not distracted by ego or fear. You act from principle, not pressure. This way of life doesn't make external chaos disappear. It makes it irrelevant to your inner stability. Like a lighthouse in a storm, your character becomes your compass. And in a world that constantly pulls people in 100 directions, this groundedness is not just rare, it's revolutionary. Philosophy as a way of life. Stoicism is not a set of abstract theories, it's a lived practice, a philosophy of the hands, heart, and mind. It invites you to experiment with virtue, to document your failures, and to rise stronger every day. It's as much about becoming a better thinker as it is about becoming a better human. For students, scholars, professionals, and seekers, it's a complete framework for rational action, resilience, and moral clarity. Don't just learn philosophy. Live it, reflect, practice, fail, learn, and keep moving forward. If this spoke to something deep within you, subscribe now. We're building a community of thinkers and doers, of philosophers in action. Live with virtue, govern your mind, and remember, the only thing truly in your power is you.